Slaanesh, of course, received not just one but two new legendary lords with Tides of Torment, so I think that warrants an update to their Immortal Empire's guide. We got Seduction, and who can forget Seduction, so let's dive in and see how it all works. And if you want to know how this channel works, it's because of channel members. They keep things moving through these cold winter months, all for $1 a month in exchange for ad-free videos. Become a member at the link below, and now let's get into Slaanesh. Before the individual lords, they still have a few mechanics that are universal to all three. First up, cults and devotees. All Slaanesh factions make some use of cults. These are essentially undersettlements built by hero actions, abilities, and more. Once built, cults have very limited building slots and have to deal with discoverability. The exact buildings vary from faction to faction, but in general you are looking at ways to gather more of the various currencies, spread corruption, buff yourself, and debuff enemies locally. You can also choose to summon or even teleport armies using cults, allowing you to get around the map a little easier, even if this is a little bit out of your control and unreliable. All buildings come with a level of discoverability, and should this become too high, the cult will be discovered and destroyed, losing everything inside. Most cult buildings cost a secondary currency, and for Dechala and the Masque, this is in the form of devotees. These are earned through a range of different sources, such as buildings, battling, quest rewards, cults themselves, and much more. It never hurts to have plenty in supply, as they're used for a lot more than just cults. For instance, pleasurable acts. These are essentially province-wide buffs you can activate for a limited time by spending devotees. You have options for a military crackdown, economic boost, or speedy growth, so they're well worth making use of if you have the devotees to spare to keep your settlements moving. And lastly, devotees can also be used to summon disciple armies. These are created by existing armies in regions of high Slaanesh corruption, and once summoned, they act like any other army with a few exceptions. They cannot recruit or replenish, so what you summon is what you get. They also can't level up, so always prioritize making use of real lords and heroes to maximize your XP income. See these more of a bit of added force when you need it, instead of an alternative to an actual army. Now we come to the different factions. First up, the Seducers of Slaanesh, led by Dechala. Dechala is the seduction specialist of Slaanesh, which is just as hard to say as it seems. He's the only lord with the ability to completely dominate a faction via seduction, and this is done through a lot of setup and perseverance. It all begins by filling up the seductive influence meter, which can be viewed in the diplomacy menu and can be done to any human, elven, or beastman faction. To increase seductive influence, you'll need to build cults and cult buildings inside your target faction's settlements, infect their lands with corruption, and impart marks of Slaanesh. The last one is done by targeting lords with hero actions, or by battling but not killing them in battle. It is a little bit fiddly, but once you get it on a roll, it quickly snowballs to the finish line. Each faction also gains effects based on how high their seduction is. This ranges from minor stat changes to diplomatic tweaks and even enabling certain other abilities for your faction. Once they reach the max level, you can spend devotees to dominate the faction, turning them into your vassal and all but guaranteeing your permanent control. Dechala can also take part in individual lord seduction. To do this, he must be in the same region as an army from a faction with 50% or more seductive influence. He can then spend devotees to instantly persuade any non-legendary lord to join your faction as a Chaos Lord, along with a quarter of their army in the form of Marauders and Chaos Warriors. It's a quick way to both weaken another faction and strengthen your own, but a little bit niche in most situations, since a 50% or more faction will tend to be pretty keen on you at that point. Dechala also has access to a few more shared mechanics, and firstly we have the Unholy Manifestations. This is a collection of 4 different abilities that unlock as Slaanesh corruption spreads throughout the map. You can empower your armies, create new cults, and even summon disciple armies without spending devotees. These also become empowered when Slaanesh corruption is ascendant by having the most of their type of corruption in the world. This is nothing mind-blowing but offers some nice bonuses for essentially free, so is well worth using when you can. They also can make use of unit seduction. In the pre-battle menu, they can choose to seduce a number of enemy units over to their side for the duration of that battle. This costs increasing amounts of gold based on how elite the target unit is, but can be a great way to turn the tide of a battle in your favour before you even enter the battlefield. Aside from these mechanics, Dechala is really built to be a ruler of as many vassals as you can get your hands on. He gains improved relations with all factions, along with more allegiance points and tributes from vassals. His own army has very few effects aside from dropping enemy leadership in the region. He can seduce enemy units before battle for a reduced cost, along with gaining more XP from each battle against a new faction. So if you're looking to min-max, use him to battle the biggest, baddest army on each new faction to farm a crazy amount of XP every single time. To get the most out of Dechala, you really need to adopt a specific and honestly convoluted playstyle. Rather than declaring wars and attacking factions with the end goal of taking more territory and gaining more settlements, you instead want to exert your influence onto everyone you can to set them up for later domination. You can obviously take control of a couple of provinces to get access to the full roster, but beyond that, you'll want to leave settlements alone. If they're from a faction you can seduce. Hero action spam is a great idea to impart gifts of Slaanesh onto every lord you see, and corruption skills and abilities are a good investment to increase concentration wherever you go and further your seduction. It can be a little bit tricky, especially starting on Ulthuan with so many factions united against you, but if you can get on a roll, you can have them all eating out of your hand in no time. All being well, you can dominate most of the donut and use the immense wealth from all these vassals to fund armies to send out into the world to either conquer new lands or dominate even more. The Empire and Bretonnia being a short sail to the east make for pretty good targets beyond Ulthuan, but equally the Dark Elves to the west are pretty plentiful. As long as you go somewhere that has factions you can dominate, you should have a pretty good time. Next up we have the Tormentors, led by Dechala the Denied One. Dechala has a unique approach to the settlements when compared to her fellow Slaaneshi lords. Instead of the regular 2 types of settlements chosen when growing, you instead have 3 kinds, each with their own very specific purpose. Thrall camps will be the most common, and they exist more or less solely to harvest as many thralls as possible. They have very limited buildings, mainly focused on harvesting thralls faster, generating some income, or very moderate defenses. Each one only has a limited number of thralls that can be harvested, and once emptied, they can be converted into the next settlement type. Tormentors' holds are their small, military-focused settlements. These have a limited selection of military buildings to recruit most of the weaker end of the roster, various provincial improvements, and defenses. And lastly, pleasure palaces, which are by far their most powerful settlement type. They can only build a limited number of these, requiring each one to reach tier 3 before another can be created. These contain the largest number of buildings, with the entirety of the roster, strong defenses, and various province and faction-wide buffs. Buildings in these palaces also generate decadence, a currency used in the Tormentors' tributes. This is a collection of upgrades for your armies and faction, and they come in 3 categories. Marks of Vindictiveness can be used before a battle to buff units in your army for the duration of that battle. Each one can be used on 3 units per purchase, so they're a relatively cost-effective method to give your armies a boost when they really need it. These can also be upgraded to increase the power of their effects to really bring in more value. Opulent gifts are items you can equip on your lords and heroes to provide them with more powerful effects, and exquisite spoils are effects for the entire faction, along with unlocking the full power of their buildings. Lastly, Dechala takes a different approach to weakening enemy armies pre-battle. Instead of seducing units over to join her side, she instead corrupts them to massively reduce their stats. This costs far less gold and renders the target units extremely weakened, so it's a good, cheap way to soften up armies to give yourself an edge. Mechanics aside, her faction's lords and heroes gain XP at an increased rate, allowing you to access their more powerful abilities a lot faster. She's also the non-demonic units expert of Slaanesh, granting them extra resistance and reduced upkeep when battling under her banner. Her non-demonic focus continues to her own army, where she grants them increased weapon strength to increase their damage output. With all her limbs, she's an expert thief, able to steal not just XP from other lords in her faction, but also magical items post-battle. And lastly, she can equip an extra weapon, because obviously she should be able to do that. Dechala has one of the most unique gameplay styles in the game, and is really akin to something like the Chaos Dwarves rather than Slaanesh. You want to harvest thralls as fast as you possibly can, which means attacking nearly everyone in sight and building as many thrall camps as you can. Having a large number of these at all times means you'll have a steady income of thralls, allowing you to build up pleasure palaces and make use of several smaller mechanics. I'd advise building up each pleasure palace near completely before bothering to settle a new one, especially before you're drowning in thralls. Splitting your attention too early is pointless, as you won't have the funds to really make use of them, causing them to sit idle, or worse, be destroyed. Each one can get you full access to the entire roster eventually, so this, combined with the limited recruitment from Tormentors' holds, will be plenty to keep your army stocked up. Speaking of which, I'd also focus on unlocking the roster, especially with the non-demonic units, to get the most powerful armies you can, with all the bonuses the faction brings. Beyond this, you have all of Cathay to bring to ruin, and have no real friends or need for them, so the world's your oyster. And lastly, we have the Accursed Troop, led by the Masque of Slaanesh. The Masque's unique mechanic is the Eternal Dance. This is something that all armies under their banner can make use of from a new screen in the Lord Details menu. You begin by choosing one of the 3 starting dances, and the more the army battles and wins, the more tempo they build up. At certain levels, this allows them to choose from a selection of buffs for the army. These come in the form of various powerful stat boosts and abilities. However, they often come at the cost of other stats, so be sure you're okay with the trade-off before you choose. Reaching the max level of tempo unlocks powerful abilities for use in the campaign, such as removing all ammo from enemy armies, teleporting armies around the map, and obliterating garrisons. Once you complete the first 3 dances, you gain access to the final dance with arguably the most powerful steps, along with the ability to send target enemy armies on a rampage until it's wiped out completely. It's a very simple mechanic, but it is incredibly powerful with the sheer amount of buffs you can pile onto your armies. As well as this, they also have access to the Unholy Manifestations and unit seduction, just the same as Nikari. Beyond mechanics, the Masque is the demonic expert of Slaanesh. All demon units in her faction are granted increased replenishment, and she can recruit demonettes a lot faster, no matter where she goes. Lastly, she can have a lot more elusors right out the gate, so will never be short on spellcasters. Her demonet focus continues to battle, where she grants them extra resistance and reduced upkeep to keep them tougher and cheaper. She's also nearly impossible to take down, with essentially 0 wound recovery time should she ever fall in battle. The Masque has the simplest gameplay of the lot and is the closest to a standard campaign that they have. You want to get to work on leveling up each of the 3 dancers as soon as you can, and all that really means is equipping one and then playing and battling as normal. One slightly cheesy tip is that switching dancers does lower your tempo, but you still keep a very large chunk, so you can pretty easily complete all 3 dancers with one army if you simply swap between them. But that's really all there is to this mechanic. Feel free to swap the effects around and experiment to find the best combination for your specific army comp, and don't forget to make use of those abilities for some wacky effects. Beyond this, you're on the west coast of Lustria, which is actually more freeing than it seems. You can of course take the fight to the rest of Lustria, or head north to the Dark Elves, east to the High Elves, or even to the Sea Lanes if you want to hit up Cathay or beyond. But what I want to know now is, who's your favourite Slaanesh legendary lord? Let me know in the comments below, like, subscribe, and if you want more Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires guides, then check out this one on how to get started in this often overwhelming map.